So today we're going to talk about conveying information and convincing the correlation to the truth. Now, why is that important anyway? Well, in my industry, or the area that I work in, coaching and therapy, it would make a lot of sense to understand whether the client is telling the truth or they are creating a fictional reality, for me to help them go from maladaptive to adaptive now. So why would a client pay that money and not tell the truth? There might be various reasons which I don't have time to go into, but it could be they get secondary gain, it could be that the behavior serves at some sort of level, it could be resistance. But it would make a lot of sense, because if you're not helping the person to move forward by working on the multifactorial areas that is stopping them from going from A to B, then they're not going to get very far. So conveying information, you convey the facts. Convince, I suppose the easiest way of putting it would be, an example would be, let's say an example would be someone trying to tell you a story to convince you, rather than portray the facts. And you see it sometimes in political arguments. Politicians will come out and they won't give a lot of facts, they'll just create a compelling, convincing story. Or you might get a phone call, for example, by someone trying to get you to switch mobile phone providers, like I got the other day, and they may have had the best intentions for me. I'm not saying convincing is a bad thing or conveying is a bad thing either, and I'm not saying it's a linear causality to telling the truth, but there is, certainly in my experience of studying behaviour for over 20 years, if not more, a correlation. Or perhaps possibly the other day I got a phone call of someone trying to sell me a law of attraction day, and they may have all the best intentions for me, and the salesperson proceeded to say that I could transform my life, and he was telling me how bad my life was and how much better it could be, without knowing me, having met me, or anything like that. I'm sort of sure he's reading off a script and telling me these stories. But anyway, I'm not saying that people have got bad intentions when they do that, and I'm not saying to sort of go away and interrogate your children to see whether they've, did you eat the chocolate biscuits? How could you blame me? I didn't eat them. Rather than, no, I didn't eat them. I'm not saying to go and interrogate your partner and say, where were you last night? And they're adamant that they did whatever. I'm just saying you use it for what you will, but I certainly think there is a correlation between the way information is conveyed, or if it's done in a convincing way. I suppose in a way there is a spectrum, and you see sometimes people who do gaslighting. So the gaslighter who creates a story for the person that insinuates that the person's mad. For example, the gaslighter might create some fictional story that the victim of gaslighting actually begins to believe, and I am this, I am that, or whatever. And I suppose you could say it's a narcissistic trap too, the narcissist, for example, as well. And bearing in mind too, the gaslighting and narcissists, they don't have any reason. There's no point reasoning or logical reasoning, because in the end of the day, you're just fueling the fire to that extent. So the narcissist is baiting you anyway. So they're firing a communication into the limbic system part of the brain to get an emotional reaction. And it's kind of like push-pull, and you can almost take what they say for a pinch of salt, because it can be push-pull. 1 minute you're the best thing since sliced bread, then the next thing you haven't agreed with something they have said, and they go against you. So, and it could be anything. For example, maybe you haven't liked one of their Facebook posts, or maybe you sort of haven't criticised them but suggested that something could be improved, and the narcissist then goes into retreat, takes the criticism as an insecurity, and you open up a wound. And that's another story for another day, and I'm not here to discuss that. But in that area, I think there's a gap between impulse and action. And I think what I've learned over the years, when you if you do encounter someone who gaslights or a narcissist, you probably want to take a couple of deep breaths before you choose a response, because obviously they're going to sort of test to see your emotional reactions. They can bait you, they're going to draw you in, and it's an argument that you'd probably have no chance of winning, because there's no rational or logic. And certainly you see some politicians, I'm not naming names, but we see some politicians out there that have got these sort of narcissistic qualities, and they sort of don't give you any facts, and they sort of create these sort of fictional stories, and a lot of them are fear-based as well. They kind of, because fear is a big driver of behaviour. But that's another story for today. I'm not here to talk about that, and I may cover it at some point. But one of the things I sort of want to mention today, I suppose you could use it if you're interviewing someone and you ask them about previous jobs or previous situations. I suppose you could use it for, and it's not the only thing. Things are multifactorial. It's not about catching someone out whether they're telling the truth or not, for sure. And these things are multifactorial in terms of gauging if someone's being honest. And who cares anyway? In one sense, if there's no stake in it for you, then people say what they want. But obviously, I said in my point of view, from a coaching therapist point of view, it's quite useful. Because I want to help people go from maladaptive to adaptive, and one way to do that is to get communication. We communicate through various channels, and one being linguistically and body language, and I think that's useful to help someone go from A to B. So the conveying of information generally is factual. Okay, it's factual. They tell you a story. This is what's happening. How do you feel? When do you feel it? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being high. And you get sort of factual information. The convincing might be, well, it's everybody else's fault, it's not me, or it's even you, it's because of this, and nobody likes me. And I'm not saying that isn't conveying information. To a certain extent, there is a spectrum, but you sort of know the difference. And think about it, for example, maybe you want to take your mind back to your university dating days. You might have been dating someone at university who you asked them, where were you the night before? And you knew perfectly well that they sort of were out raving at a club or something like that. You heard from everybody that they sort of were up to no good, so to speak, but they said, I was at the cinema. Well, you do not believe me? Well, if you don't believe me, there's something wrong with you. So that's probably moving towards gaslighting a bit more than convincing. But you sort of get the drift. But equally, someone, if they tell you, well, I was at the cinema last night. But I suppose the danger with that actually is that you might get the covert narcissist who can convince themselves, and they can keep that sort of dead eye and come up with whatever. So I think for me there is a correlation there, convey and convince, and take out of what you will, and certainly in your own profession you can utilize it for what you will. I've mentioned earlier, for me it's a useful tool when I'm doing a formulation and I'm doing a pre-talk or during the consultations, and the clients talk about the issues and what they want to change, and I sort of look at that and see what they put forward, and that can be quite useful. So thank you for watching. Live with passion. Boom.